The Whitford estate shimmered under the glow of 100 chandeliers, each crystal reflecting wealth as casually as sunlight reflects off water. The wedding of Camille Whitford, daughter of the powerful Whitford dynasty, was meant to be a flawless showcase of elegance, money, and social prestige. Everything was timed, rehearsed, polished. Absolutely nothing was supposed to be unexpected. So when the grand doors opened and Elias Whitford, Camille's older brother and the family billionaire, walked in with a guest no one recognized, every champagne flute froze mid-air. He wasn't dressed like the rest of the men in the hall. While the others wore tailored tuxedos and imported cufflinks, the stranger wore a clean but simple charcoal suit, well-fitting but clearly not designer. No label, no shine, no attempt to blend in. His shoes were polished but modest, the kind people wore because they needed to, not because they were part of a $1,000 outfit. He carried himself with quiet confidence, though, his back straight, shoulders firm, and his gaze was calm but observant, as if he was used to people staring at him, yet entirely unaffected by it. Guests whispered instantly, "Who is he?" Elias brought him. He is dressed so simply. Did Elias lose a bet? No way he's invited. Maybe he's staff. But he walked in with Elias, Camille's fiancé Bradley Thomason, groom, future political candidate, and poster child of generational privilege, stiffened the moment he saw the man. His eyes narrowed, then widened in disbelief, then darted toward Camille's father. Harrison Whitford, the patriarch, was already frowning. Elias strode confidently through the hall with the stranger beside him, ignoring every whisper. His expression carried his usual subtle amusement, the look of someone who enjoyed subverting expectations whenever he could. Camille, radiant in her bridal gown, forced a polite smile. She adored her brother, but he had a dangerous talent for shaking up family events. "Elias," she said, stepping away from the bridesmaids, "you're late." "And yet right on time," he replied with a wink. He turned slightly toward his guest. "Camille, meet Marcus. He's with me." Marcus offered a small nod. "Congratulations, ma'am. It's an honor." Camille blinked. The moment she heard his voice, calm and respectful, she relaxed slightly, but only slightly. She sensed tension rising around her like heat off the asphalt. Bradley approached quickly, his smile stretched too thin to be genuine. "Elias," he said sharply, "did you forget to mention you were bringing guests?" Elias didn't flinch. "No, I simply decided not to mention it." Bradley shifted uncomfortably. His eyes flicked over Marcus's modest suit, with judgment he wasn't trying very hard to hide. "Well, this is a private event. Seating is assigned. The dress code." Elias cut him off, still smiling. "He's fine." Bradley's jaw twitched. "May I ask who he is?" Before Elias could answer, a slender, well-dressed woman, Bradley's mother, inserted herself beside them. "Elias, dear," she said with a tone soaked in discomfort, "we have a certain standard at these events. Your friend might feel out of place." Marcus didn't react outwardly. His expression remained gentle and composed. Elias's smile faded. "Funny," he said softly. "He fits in just fine to me." A ripple of unease traveled through the nearby guests. Bradley leaned closer, dropping his voice. "This is a high-level wedding. There are senators here, CEOs, family friends. You can't just bring some random—" Marcus finally spoke. "I understand this environment might prefer familiarity," he said quietly, "but I was invited, and I'm simply here to support Elias." His calm tone made several guests uncomfortable. A poor man speaking with self-assurance. They weren't used to that. Bradley huffed. "Right, well, perhaps Elias can seat you near the back with the staff so you don't disrupt the—" Elias snapped. "Bradley," he said sharply, "Marcus sits with me." The room stilled. Camille looked between her brother and her fiancé, sensing something dangerous brewing. "Elias," she whispered, "maybe we can talk after the ceremony." "Actually," Bradley interrupted loudly, desperate to regain control, "I think we should get something straight now. This is a prestigious union between two powerful families. Optics matter. I can't have someone who doesn't—" he gestured vaguely at Marcus— "belong here." The moment the words left his mouth, several guests gasped softly. Camille's parents exchanged a horrified glance, not because they disagreed, but because Bradley said the quiet part out loud. Elias stepped closer to Marcus as if shielding him. "You're making assumptions," Elias said coldly. Bradley scoffed. "Oh, come on, just look at him." Marcus lifted his eyes, steady, thoughtful, unreadable. Bradley added, "If he were someone important, I'd know, trust me." A beat of silence spread through the hall like a thick fog. Then Marcus spoke, not loud, but clear enough to echo. "Well," he said, eyes fixed on Bradley, "you do know me." Bradley laughed awkwardly. "I doubt that." But Marcus didn't look away. He simply smiled, and said the words that would freeze the entire wedding. "Hello, boss." Every breath in the hall vanished at once. For a moment, the words didn't register. They just hovered in the air like an unexpected note in a familiar song, slightly off-key but impossible to ignore. Bradley blinked. Once, twice. "Excuse me?" he whispered, the confidence draining from his face like water leaking from a cracked vase. Marcus didn't move, didn't shift, didn't flinch. "Hello, boss." Gasps fluttered through the hall, soft at first, then louder, growing into a wave of disbelief. Even Camille's bouquet dipped slightly, her grip loosening. Harrison Whitford's expression collapsed. Bradley's parents stiffened as if someone had snapped a photograph they didn't approve of. The guests clung to their champagne glasses as though the stems might steady them. Bradley swallowed, throat tight. I don't understand. I'm not your—" Elias interrupted with a sigh that carried the weight of a long, satisfying reveal. "Actually, Bradley, you are—" Marcus stepped forward gently, tone composed. "I work at your campaign headquarters," murmurs erupted. Someone whispered, "Campaign? Isn't Bradley running for office soon?" Another added, "Why didn't he recognize him?" The whispers blended into a low, simmering chorus of confusion. Bradley chuckled nervously, trying to save himself. "Hold on. I employ hundreds of people. He could be—" Marcus lifted a calm hand. "I'm your senior logistics manager." The room jolted. Bradley froze. His face drained of color so quickly it looked as if the truth itself had pulled the pigment out of him. Marcus continued gently, with no malice, almost like a teacher presenting facts to a reluctant student. "I oversee event security, scheduling networks, speech transportation routes, volunteer coordination and risk assessment. You signed my promotion papers 6 months ago." Bradley's mouth hung open. His mother clutched his arm. Camille's eyes widened so far they shimmered like glass. But Elias wasn't done. He stepped forward, voice carrying the elegant sharpness of a blade hidden inside a velvet sheath. "Yes, Bradley. Marcus here, the man you assumed didn't belong, has been running half your operation for months, quietly, efficiently, without needing validation from people who judge by tailoring and brand names." Bradley sputtered. But he wears clothes that fit his budget," Marcus finished softly. "A budget determined by the salary you approved." The honesty struck harder than any insult could. Bradley's father cleared his throat, eager to salvage the optics. "Well, son, anyone can slip through the cracks. Maybe he's new or—" "No," Elias said, shaking his head. "Bradley knows exactly who Marcus is. He just chose not to see him." A few guests nodded in painful agreement. The truth hung heavy. Camille stepped forward, voice small but steady. "Marcus, why didn't you tell him?" Marcus offered a gentle smile, one that seemed to hold both humility and a quiet strength. "There was no need. My job is to work. His job is to know the people he leads." His gaze flicked toward Bradley, not accusing, merely stating. "We've crossed paths many times, but he never looked at me long enough to remember." The words hovered like a mirror, forcing Bradley to confront the reflection he'd spent years avoiding. Bradley opened his mouth to respond, but Elias cut in again. "And that's not even the real reason I brought Marcus today." Bradley turned sharply to Elias. "What is that supposed to mean?" Elias exhaled, the kind of breath someone takes before removing a mask. "Marcus has something to share, something you accidentally made a mess of." Marcus didn't flinch. He simply reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a small leather folder, the kind used for confidential files. Bradley's eyes widened in horror. "What is that?" "A report," Marcus said calmly. "One you asked me to bury." Gasps burst across the room again like fireworks. Bradley shook his head violently. No, Marcus, wait, don't." But Marcus continued, voice gentle, steady, and heartbreakingly clear. "You instructed me to suppress findings that showed misuse of donor funds, money diverted from veterans' programs into luxury expenditures for your campaign." Silence detonated throughout the room. Several guests stiffened. 2 men in suits, clearly political donors, shared a look of betrayal. Camille swayed slightly, her bridesmaids catching her elbows. Bradley looked like a building struck by a wrecking ball. You can't prove." "I can," Marcus replied softly. "And I brought it directly to Elias when you tried to have me fired for asking ethical questions." Elias spread his hands, expression calm but hardened. Surprise! Someone whispered near the back, "That's illegal." Another added, "This could ruin Bradley. The whole family." Camille's eyes filled with tears. "Bradley, is this true?" Bradley opened his mouth, but the truth had already trapped him. His silence said everything. Marcus looked at Camille with genuine empathy. "I'm sorry you had to learn this today, ma'am. I didn't want to bring this here, but Elias insisted that the truth belongs in the open, especially before vows are exchanged." Camille's gown shimmered under the light, but her voice broke. "You were going to let me marry you while hiding this?" Bradley reached for her. "Camille, please." She stepped back. "Don't touch me." The guests watched, hearts pounding, champagne forgotten. And then Marcus turned back to Bradley one last time, his voice steady as a lighthouse beam. "You judged me by my clothes, by my skin, by what you assumed about my worth. Meanwhile, I've been holding your campaign together while you tried to break the rules to get ahead." Bradley had no response left. His world and his wedding were crumbling. Silence clung to the wedding hall like thick fog, smothering every whisper, every blink, every heartbeat. Only Marcus's calm voice lingered in the air, unnervingly steady. "Hello, boss." The word boss echoed in Bradley's mind like a slap. His face drained of color. His lips trembled, not from fear, but from the shock of having his secret life dragged into the light without warning. Camille stared at her fiancé, confused, her bouquet trembling slightly in her hands. What does he mean, Bradley?" she whispered. Bradley swallowed hard, but nothing came out. He was choking on the very arrogance he'd worn like armor. Elias folded his arms, stepping slightly beside Marcus, his expression unreadable. "So," Elias said lightly, "should I explain it for you, or do you want to tell them yourself?" Bradley flinched as if struck. His mother took a frantic step forward. "Bradley, sweetheart, who is this man?" Marcus looked at her, softly, respectfully. "I'm someone your son knows very well, ma'am." Guests leaned forward, hungry for the truth, half horrified, half thrilled to witness a scandal unfolding in real time. Bradley finally found his voice, though shaky. This has to be some mistake. I don't... Marcus didn't let him finish. "I worked for Bradley for 2 years, Marcus said, his tone matter-of-fact. "Warehouse supervisor at Thomason Logistics." A collective gasp surged through the room. Bradley's face contorted. That company is enormous. I don't know every low-level employee." Marcus chuckled softly. "Low-level? You said something very different when the cameras were off." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Marcus," he murmured, "tell them." Marcus inhaled calmly. "I wasn't just a warehouse supervisor. I ran your entire operations sector at the East Division, inventory, supply chain mapping, risk mitigation. The backbone of your campaigns claimed efficiency miracle." More gasps. Bradley tried to shake it off. "Even if you work there, that doesn't make you someone special. I manage hundreds of people." Marcus interrupted again, still calm. "You fired me." Dead silence. A few heads turned sharply toward Bradley. Camille's eyes widened. "Bradley, you fired him? Why?" Bradley's voice cracked. I don't remember." Marcus calmly lifted a hand. "I remember..." He took one steady step forward. Bradley backed up instinctively. "You fired me," Marcus said slowly, "because I told you your shipment logs were fraudulent, that your numbers didn't match your reports, that your campaign donations were coming from reallocated shipments meant for disaster relief programs." The hall erupted into shocked murmurs. A gourmet fork clattered onto a plate somewhere in the back. Bradley's father paled. Bradley's mother swayed, grabbing a chair for support. "I threatened your secrets," Marcus continued softly, "and you threatened my job. Then you promised to make sure I never worked in logistics again." Bradley's mouth fell open. That's a lie. It's not," Elias cut in sharply. Every head snapped toward him. Elias turned to the crowd. "That's why Marcus is here today," Camille whispered, voice heavy with disbelief. "Elias, you knew." "Oh, I knew everything," he replied. "But I didn't bring Marcus to expose Bradley. I brought him because he saved my company." Marcus looked away, embarrassed by the praise. Bradley stuttered. What are you talking about? He works in warehouses." "No," Elias smiled faintly. "He works in systems, supply chain intelligence, cyber logistics, quiet genius. He was the one who discovered the leak in my export division, the one costing us millions. The leak your team created." The room exploded again. Shocked whispers, gasps, someone muttering "Oh my God" repeatedly. Bradley stepped back, beads of sweat forming at his hairline. "You're lying." This is some setup. Elias pulled a small, sleek tablet from his jacket. Everything Marcus uncovered is right here. Bradley's parents froze. One senator in the front row stiffened visibly. One of the Thomason family's business partners slowly slid his wedding program over his face to hide his expression. Marcus met Bradley's eyes, voice still soft but unshakable. I never intended to expose you like this, but you insisted on humiliating me. You insisted on labeling me. You insisted on making assumptions based on a suit. Some guests looked shamefully at their feet. Marcus continued. Elias offered me a position after you fired me, a senior analyst role, double the pay, a team of my own, and he treated me with respect you still don't understand. Camille felt her world tilting. Bradley, she whispered, trembling, is any of this true? Bradley's lips quivered, but the truth was written all over his posture, the slumped shoulders, the shifting eyes, the silent panic. Elias stepped forward, his voice low but hard. I didn't bring Marcus to ruin your wedding. I brought him because I refused to let my sister marry a fraud. Bradley exploded suddenly, pointing at Marcus. You're nothing. You think dressing up and standing here makes you important? You're still... But Marcus cut him off with one quiet sentence that silenced the entire hall. Bradley, your problem isn't that you don't remember me. Your problem is that I remember everything you did. Bradley sputtered. Camille's bouquet slipped from her fingers and hit the marble floor with a dull, heartbreaking thud. She whispered, I need the truth. All of it. Marcus nodded gently. I'll tell you, he said. But you may not like the answer. And the room braced itself for everything that was about to be revealed. Silence smothered the grand wedding hall, the kind of silence that exposes every hidden bias, every unspoken judgment, every quiet cruelty people convince themselves doesn't exist. Camille stood frozen at the altar, looking between Bradley and Marcus, her heart sinking deeper with every passing second. Her wedding day, her most carefully planned, meticulously perfected day, now balanced on the thin edge of a truth she'd never expected. Bradley's face cycled rapidly through shock, fear, and anger. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again, desperate to find a version of reality that made him look less like the villain he suddenly realized he appeared to be. You're not him, Bradley stammered. My boss is... He's older. He's someone else. Marcus didn't move. You've never met Ericsson Industries owner in person. Not once. Your entire communication has been through email and a monthly video call with my representative. A few guests gasped. Others whispered. Bradley's voice cracked. But you're dressed modestly. Marcus finished for him. Yes. I prefer investing in people, not fabric. It was calm, simple, devastating. Elias stepped forward, folding his arms. Bradley, you made assumptions, loud ones. Camille's eyes filled with tears, not because the wedding was ruined, but because she saw her fiancé clearly for the first time. The entitlement, the superiority, the casual cruelty he assumed no one important was hearing. A senator cleared his throat uncomfortably. A CEO looked suddenly fascinated by the floor. All those who had smirked earlier shrank back into the walls, praying the moment would swallow them unnoticed. Bradley rubbed his forehead with trembling fingers. Look, Marcus, Mr. Ericsson, I didn't mean... Marcus raised one hand. Don't apologize to me because of my money. If you apologize, let it be because you saw a man and assumed he had no worth. Bradley swallowed hard. His arrogance, once inflated like a parade balloon, now deflated in front of everyone he hoped to impress. I didn't know, he whispered. Camille stepped toward Marcus, her voice fragile but sincere. Mr. Ericsson, I'm so sorry. On behalf of everyone, you owe me nothing, Marcus replied gently. You didn't judge me, you didn't dismiss me, and you didn't try to move me to the back of the room. His eyes shifted toward Bradley, but he did, and that speaks to the kind of man he is. Camille let out a trembling breath. I didn't see this side of him. Elias placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. You couldn't have. He made sure of that. Bradley stepped forward desperately. Camille, wait. Don't listen to them. This is a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding is using the wrong fork at dinner, Camille said softly. This was you humiliating, someone you thought wasn't worthy of standing near you. Bradley turned to Marcus again, voice shaking. I swear I treat people well. I'm a good man. Marcus tilted his head thoughtfully. People are good when it costs them nothing. The question is, who are you when you think no one important is watching? The silence that followed broke Bradley more than any insult could. At the far end of the hall, Bradley's mother, the same woman who moments ago had judged Marcus's suit, covered her face with her hand. The whispers around her grew sharper. A bridesmaid muttered, "He really thought he could talk down to a billionaire." Another said, "Not just a billionaire, one of the most private, most powerful ones." An elderly guest shook his head. "Character is shown in moments like these." Camille looked at Bradley one last time. "Do you realize how much this reveals? How quickly you dismissed someone you didn't approve of? How easily you belittled someone simply because you judged him poor?" Bradley's lips trembled. His polished image was slipping like sand through clenched fists. "I can fix this," he pleaded. "I just need—" Camille cut him off with a painful whisper. "I don't think you can fix who you are." Bradley stared at her, shattered. "You're calling off the wedding? In front of everyone?" "You already did," she replied. "With your words." A ripple of shock swept through the room. The string quartet, unsure what to do, quietly set their bows down. A few guests stepped out for air. Others leaned in, unable to look away from the collapse of everything Bradley had built his life around. Status, admiration, image. Marcus turned to Camille. "I'm sorry this happened today, but truth has a way of choosing its own moment." Camille nodded, wiping her tears. Maybe it chose the right one. Harrison Whitford, who had been silent until now, approached Marcus with an awkward mix of gratitude and embarrassment. "Mr. Erickson, our family, needs no forgiveness from me," Marcus said. "Elias invited me as a friend, and I came because I trust him. He believed today would show people's true colors." He glanced at Bradley. And he was right. Bradley sank onto the nearest chair, head in his hands. The groom who once walked with a politician's confidence now looked like a little boy caught stealing from a cookie jar. Except this time, the entire city saw it happen. Camille approached Marcus again, her voice steady. "Thank you for standing firm. You didn't deserve how you were treated." Marcus nodded. "Neither do the thousands of employees your fiancé would have represented one day." Those words hit harder than any slap. Elias extended a hand to Marcus. "Ready to go?" Marcus smiled faintly. "After you." As the two men walked out, the hall watched in stunned silence. One poorly dressed black man had just changed everything, not with power, not with anger, but with truth. And nothing in the Whitford dynasty would ever